All right. See people trickling in here. If you're here, then you're at the Retrotec webinar to cover the Solos, the new manometer that we just launched. So happy Thursday, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, I guess, if you're calling in from the West Coast. It's still morning there. But yeah, happy Thursday or Little Friday, as we like to call it. We're getting towards the end of the week. But yeah, I feel like this webinar, I think we'll be pretty short and sweet. We'll probably keep it around 30 minutes. And then, of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away. But yeah, during this, we're just going to cover what the Solo is and then what it's designed to be used for, or at least what we see our customer base using it for. So I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. So the Solo manometer, the name Solo comes from the single channel gauge. So that's pretty much all it is. It's the same pressure sensor and pressure switch that's in the DM32X, just on one channel. So some cool features and specs on it. It's an innovative display, which means we put an accelerometer into the device. So if you turn it on its side, the screen will rotate with it. So if you guys can see that, if I turn this around, no matter which angle that I hold it, the screen will rotate. So if you're holding it in your hand, if you want the pressure ports at the bottom, they can be at the bottom, or if you want to flip it upside down, they can be at the top. However you want that to work out for you. Has a pretty long battery life, 19 hours of continuous use. So that'll definitely get you through a good full day or two of testing. Very portable. It's lightweight, easily fits into your pocket. We kept the belt clip on the back like you're used to from the DM32 and the DM32X. And it's also magnetic, so it'll stick to air handler cabinets and things such as that. And it's also pretty cost effective. So there's been some high resolution single channel gauges that have come out on the market. They're still relatively expensive. We are putting this one for the US at $395. And one way that we were able to do that was just pretty much to keep it bare bones. There's no wireless connectivity. We see this as like a good starting point, especially for HVAC contractors that are trying to kind of slowly wade into the pool of home performance. That way they're not having to dive in, spending $2,000 for a manometer or a full blower door kit. They can spend around $400 and get that same precision with the auto zeroing, and then can kind of play around with house pressures and things like that. So even if you don't have a blower door, if you don't have any idea about the condition of the building envelope, you can start turning on exhaust fans and things like that to see if that moves. And you can do that with this gauge, just to maybe get a ballpark idea of if the house is leaky or tight, and things like that. So that way you can kind of start to understand how houses work, what a tight or loose building envelope looks like when you start changing things around in the house. The accuracy of this is pretty incredible. Like I mentioned, it's the same digital sensor that the DM32X has. And if you guys remember when we launched the DM32X, we were able to do some software filtering on that sensor just to make it extremely precise and repeatable. And so we took everything from that gauge and put it in here. And even in some pretty demanding environments, I mean, if you're in a crazy hot attic or something like that with it, I mean, at 158 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll still be, around 1 Pascal of the reading as far as accuracy goes. So, that sensor and pressure switch can take some abuse as far as temperature goes. The span of it, just like the 32 and the 32X, it's plus or minus 10 inches of water. So for taking your static pressure readings, you've got plenty of room there just to use it, just like any other HVAC manometer. There's a few different display modes that you can choose from. As you can see here on the front, the device only has 2 buttons. There's a power button, and then there's a menu button. And if you just tap the menu button, you can see you can go from pascals to inches of water to PSI, PSF, and millibars. for our friends over in Europe that use that. And we also included some time averaging settings in here too. So if I hold that menu button down, it'll take me to a little menu. So I can cycle through. I can tell it to turn itself off after a certain amount of time, or I can adjust the time averaging. So we can set it from 1 second, from 5, 10, 15 up to 30. If you're trying to determine if a house is positive or negative when the HVAC system is running, and you've got a little bit of wind hitting the probe outside, then setting it for a longer time average will help you out to kind of stabilize that a little bit. So that way you don't have to, log into an app, pull out your phone or anything like that. We just built it straight in, so you can have that functionality right there. So that's just a brief rundown of what it is. Like I said, it's a pretty straightforward manometer. It just has all of that precision that the DM32X has, as well as the auto zeroing built straight into it. So I'll go into a little bit about what we expect it to be used for. As I mentioned before, we see this being used for the same types of uses that your typical HVAC manometer can do. But of course, this is a little bit nicer because it does have that auto zeroing feature. You don't have to zero it out before you take a reading each time. It does that all on its own. I see this manometer as a great sidekick for your blower door. So you can attach this to a pressure pan if you're running a blower door test to depressurize the house to negative 50 pascals. Then you can attach this gauge to a pressure pan and then run around and look for leaks, just like you would with an extra DM32 or a DM32X, except for now you just don't have to have that additional expensive manometer. This is just a little sidekick that'll do the same thing at a lower cost for you. So whether if you're looking for duct leakage in supplies or returns, or if you're looking for envelope leakage, like maybe to see how much can lights are leaking or covering outlets or light switch covers and things like that, you can do that the exact same way that you have been with your other manometers that you're used to. The Solo will also work with the flow box. So it will not display a flow directly onto the device, but there is a chart where you can see what the box pressure is, depending on how many holes you have open, reference that, and then see what your flow would be there. So it's not as direct as it is using it with the DM32 or DM32X, where you can go in and select that device and see what that exact flow is in real time. But you can still use this gauge to see what the flow is when you use the reference chart with it. So it'll still work for that. The mini probe is a great counterpart for this gauge. Again, when you're using it with a blower door, if you're trying to find leaks in assemblies, that mini probe, the end of that tube is 1/16 of an inch. So you can really get into some tight nooks and crannies with it and see what those pressure differentials are. If you have a leaky wall assembly or floor, crawl space, attic, to see what that leakage profile looks like for that assembly that you're testing. So as you can see here, I'm depressurizing the house to negative 50. Accessing this, this is an interior wall here that's just crazy leaky. It's pretty much open to the attic above in a lot of places. So we can see that reflected here on the manometer as we access that wall. But yeah, the nice thing about using that probe too is that you don't have to drill a hole into stuff. A lot of times you can usually find a crack or hole or something small enough to really get it in there and see what's going on. So yeah, it can fit between floors and shoe molding baseboards. And that manometer will give you the same reading that a DM32X would. Looking at house pressure, I talked about this earlier, seeing if a house is going positive or negative. So for example, if we have everything turned off in the house, and then we turn on the HVAC system, and if we see that the house is going positive, that likely means that we have more leakage on the return side of the system than we do on the supply side. And then vice versa, the other way around. So that can kind of tell us about what happens in the house naturally when you're just running fans. Again, too, if you start turning on exhaust fans, bath exhaust, kitchen exhaust, dryers, you can see what happens to that house pressure as you start to kick those fans on, and to see what that infiltration looks like in real time as people are living in the house, to help narrow down where the source of some high humidity complaints might be coming from, comfort complaints, things like that. Being able to read pressures accurately in a small amount can tell you a whole lot about what's going on in a building. So, this manometer and that probe, since it's a rigid metal, you can shut a door over it, is great for that. Looking at room pressures too. If you guys joined us back earlier in the summer when John Tooley came in and gave the presentation on Mad Air, just to see how room pressures change when you shut and close doors, when the HVAC system is running, this manometer is great just to have in your tool bag. If you don't have a full blower door on you to really do a full envelope evaluation, you can at least see, what changes when you start shutting and opening bedroom doors, and how that might change the whole house pressure in general when that HVAC system is running. So to really see if bedrooms, or I guess any interior rooms inside the house, are out of balance as far as the HVAC delivery to that space goes, this manometer is great for that. That way, like I said, you can just kind of keep it in a separate tool bag. That way, it's something that you always have on you. That's always going to be in the truck to do a quick evaluation like that, to help narrow down the source of some comfort complaints in a house. So here, really all we're doing is we have this bedroom door shut. We have a tube tossed under the door, shut the door, and we see with the HVAC system running that this house is about 5 pascals positive. So with pressure getting into that high, I mean, there's definitely some chances of some discomfort in that bedroom, especially if the occupants sleep with the door closed. Took a screenshot here from one of Corbett Lunsford's videos, but doing some CAS testing, or combustion area zone testing. So like if you're doing a worst case depressurization test in a house, a lot of our friends in weatherization do this. Basically, like if you have a gas water heater, and you want to see if you can set the house up to where you can make it backdraft, you can do that. You can actually check that with this manometer, instead of having to have a full blower door manometer to do that. So that way, this, being able to run through and do a test like this is, now that the tools needed are a lot less expensive than they used to be. Similar with flue draft pressurization tests. Again, you need a rigid metal probe to do that, to access that flue pipe. So here you can see Corbett was using our old DM2, which works great, but really just for that application, that manometer is kind of overkill for it, even though it works just fine for it. You set it to pascals, you can see if it's drafting or not. But now, with the Solo, you just need a less complex device to do the same thing. And radon mitigation testing also, if you can see at the bottom of this, Corbett's there with a gentleman from Fantech, where they're testing a radon mitigation system. They've got a DM32, again, which works great for it. They also have a Dwyer micromanometer, but on those, they don't auto zero, so you have to make sure you zero it out each time. If not, it can give you an inaccurate reading. But now with the Solo, I mean, it's really a perfect gauge to use with that, since it auto zeroes itself out and has that precision that you need to make sure that that radon mitigation system is working the way that it should. And again, just spot checking assemblies when you're running blower door tests, just having an extra gauge to reference certain areas to see what's going on. In this photo, a couple of weeks ago, Noah is here on the webinar with us. We went with our friends from CETA in Chicago to go test a fire station that was having some major problems. The bunk room where the firemen sleep was just insanely hot and humid. And so we ended up it actually took about 6 blower door fans. We ran a blower door test on it. But at the same time, we had a solo in the ceiling assembly in the bunk room. So we just had a mini probe there. And yeah, it was pretty humid. Let me back it up. So what you don't see, you see these ceiling tiles, but above that is the air handler duct system. And then above that is essentially just foil backed insulation that's tacked up to the trusses above. So whoever installed that was thinking, yeah, this will be an air barrier. But really it was just riddled with holes. It was not deliberately sealed at the seams. Some areas were falling down. So as we were running the blower door test, we wanted to see what that space was doing while we were running the test to really see, could we call that an air barrier or not? And the answer was no, we couldn't. So I believe we were at 60 pascals when we were running this. We were doing a commercial multi-point blower door test. And I think we ramped it up to 60 and we were getting like 46 pascals there. So yeah, that cavity above the where the firemen were sleeping is essentially outside. And so those ceiling tiles were acting like more of an air barrier than that barrier above them was. So yeah, there was drip marks everywhere. The ductwork was condensing and dripping down. The ductwork was getting so wet, the insulation was falling off in some places. And so yeah, we did a full building test on this and took some thermal images, and the scope of work for remediation is still getting put together because we just did this test a couple of weeks ago. But I think it's going to end up being pretty robust, where a lot of this ceiling tile is just going to have to get pulled down and have a real rigid ceiling put back into place. And maybe some of these duct systems removed and having ductless systems with dehumidifiers put in, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking, well, yeah, just spray foam the roof deck. But yeah, there's so many places that you just can't access. I was thinking the same thing. And then when I went into the attic, it was just a mess of metal trusses up there. And there was just no way you can get around and foam it all. So I think just the way that we're going to encapsulate and condition the space is going to be just vastly different than what it is now to really make it behave. But yeah, the solo was really handy. That way we could just throw it up there and just kind of see what those assemblies were doing as we were running blower door fans. So it was really nice to have as like a sidekick for our blower door equipment to see what was happening in other parts of the building. But yeah, it's out now. It's available here in the US. The retail price is $395. They're straight from our website. Retrotec Tools, I believe, is also carrying them right now too. Actually, I know for sure they are. They have some in stock. But that's it. Lee and Noah are both on the line here. Do we have any questions in?
It does not look like it. Looks like you covered things pretty thoroughly.
Cool. Yeah, I figured, when we released the DM32X, we had a pretty long, lengthy presentation to go through because of all the features that it has. But this gauge is pretty straightforward. It's a single channel auto zeroing manometer with the same precision that you're used to. So yeah, so basically I covered all of the uses, or at least most of the uses that I see it being used for, but I'm sure some of you will find some uses that I haven't thought of yet, where it'll come in handy in the field. So I can't wait to see what those are. But again, we are recording this. So if you have some team members that want to see this and what this kind of manometer can do, we'll have it on our YouTube channel pretty soon.
We had another one. Sorry. Yeah, we had another question come in.
Sure.
Said, pretty sure this was made clear, but just want to confirm, does not show CFM readings.
Correct. There is a back end setting. I mean, it technically could show CFM readings, but you would have to input a bunch of other information first. So for example, if you're used to a blower door, in order to get CFM, you have to know, what the fan pressure is. And you also have to know what the orifice opening, area is as well. So there's just a lot of other things you would need to know up front. If there's a certain fan that you wanted to monitor, over a long period of time, sure, we could probably, program those parameters in, through, a program on your PC, but we're not there yet. But in order to read CFM, you just have to know those things up front. So that's really why it doesn't have that out of the gate. We're just reading pressure and then taking that information from there. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Well, if that's it, then yeah, we'll go ahead and call it a day. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you back here next time.